Development Department 1, rezoning Keswick Manor subdivision at 5140 Peachtree Boulevard, 5158 Peachtree Boulevard, 5172 Peachtree Boulevard.
Is there a motion if you don't?
Is there, yeah, go ahead. You got it. I ready to go?
Motion to approve the variance request with the 9 conditions as recommended by staff with the following additional conditions. The adjacent field between the subject property and the tennis courts may be made available for a parking easement during construction, and in return, the developer will install at the cost of the developer a new Little League ball field with a backstop and a full field fencing at the direction of staff. The streetscaping recommended in number 9 shall be extended at the cost of the developer from the driveway of the softball field parking along that one side of the street and around to the rear of the new Little League field at the direction of staff. And developer agrees to make every effort to install maximum paved parking area in the rear of the property for guest parking at the direction of staff.
Second. Very good discussion.
Yes, Tom, I had some, I had a motion written together as well that included not so specific direction. And in your motion, it says with direction of staff. Is that right?
Yeah, at the direction of staff.
At the direction of staff. So that seem to give the indication of what we're looking for, but later on during construction, when it comes down to a cost and a needs analysis, the changes and the priorities can be met at that point in time. Is that?
Well, I think that just out of fairness to the developer, we should probably be specific as to
Right.
if there's any specificity that you want to add.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, a Little League ball field with,
Right.
I would imagine would be the dirt, the mound, the fenced backstop, maybe a bleacher or two, just like we have on
Right.
our current asset, and then possibly, you know, maybe a 4-foot tall chain link fence or whatever,
Right.
rolling out to create like an outfield.
Sure.
So
I understand.
just grass and dirt and fence is what I had in mind. And then we had talked about the streetscape, instead of just being right in front of the actual property,
Right.
so it looked really noticeable that there were houses there all of a
And
sudden.
I believe that was a condition set forth by the development department, if I'm not
That
mistaken.
was, but he only had them covering the area of the property.
And
My
developer had recommended that, or offered to go from
Yeah.
side to side.
And so, just like we did with the softball field, where the path goes around the back and then continues on its journey, my request would be that the developer would pay to create that streetscape scene down to the end of their development, and then continue the actual sidewalk around to the back of the baseball field.
At staff direction. Okay. I've got a couple of more that we could just discuss, and providing detailed construction schedule to coordinate with the city manager and the parks department to minimize safety issues, scheduling conflicts with city sports and city activities. I also wanted to add in that regular meetings to be set with the developer, staff, and the council designee to determine a cost and needs analysis for those improvements to the surrounding park. And I've got kind of a list of others that are listed but not limited to upgrading and replacing the fence and the gating around the fields and the courts, proper screening around those courts, additional park-like amenities such as trees, landscaping, benches, retaining walls, perhaps bathroom facilities, picnic pavilions, and path extensions throughout the property as needed.
So my question for you would be, do you want to do, is there a certain budget amount that you're
Well,
targeting? Because that's an awful lot of work, if you ask me.
No, it absolutely is, and I think mine goes kind of hand in glove with yours in the fact that I'm looking for there to be a continued effort between the community, the staff, and the council to focus on a cost and a needs analysis throughout the project.
Okay.
And to not limit them at this point or lock them into any one project that throughout the construction might not be needed or, for that matter, wanted throughout.
Well, I've been given the indication that a new Little League baseball field would be a great deal, and would be utilized fairly regularly.
And to that point, on that property now, and if Joel is available, we've got kind of 1.5 fields at that point, kind of there. The addition of one, I'm all in favor of. However, Leslie brought up a point after meeting on Thursday, that having the open space, the general open area for multi-purpose, and to not have it designated as a field, might be more palatable to not only the residents there, but the community at large.
I would totally agree with that. I'll tell you, one of the things that I've been thinking about over the weekend is our need to create a master plan for our park system.
Right.
To understand where we're going to have newly acquired green space, where we're going to have various assets. And so you're right, it may be short-sighted to put a second Little League ball field in Keswick when it might serve a much better use being over at Dresden Park, for example. I'm not familiar with what the assets are that are over there, but making sure that the families over in that part of Chamblee now have a local place to be able to go to their ball games, just the same. I'm interested in just the same. So
it seems to me that this is a list of conditions, and let me see if I understand you correctly. This is a list of conditions that this developer can choose from, or do you expect him to meet all of these?
all
I think that it is a terrible idea to put a field right where you're talking about, in that
Okay.
open field. There needs to be some open area in that park that is not designated for anything other than for people running around, throwing frisbees, et cetera, et cetera. And there is nowhere else in the park that is for that purpose. That's number one. Number two, I think you have to be reasonable about asking developers to spend money outside of what it takes to put the developments in. And I completely understand that it would be great to get something back from the developers that will be to the benefit of the park and to the people that live in that area. But refencing and resurfacing and more lights here and more lights there, I think that, I don't understand, number one, what you're saying, what you mean when you say cost analysis. Cost and benefits analysis. What does that mean? Does that mean that our development director can come back and say, this is too expensive, they shouldn't have to do it?
If you look at the
Well, yeah, that was to my
that's what the
point.
answer is.
And yes, I mean, I think at some point there needs to be a conversation once this project is broken ground, or even before, of what the costs are and what the expectations are. And that's why I wanted to keep it. You know, Tom and I's motions are very similar in the things that we're seeking, you know, for the developer to provide for this park. But at the same time, once things are underway and once things start to continue, plans change, attitudes change, and priorities change. So that's why I wanted to try to keep it a little bit more open-ended, to work directly with the development department and the council designee. So those things can be decided on as we move forward.
So how about if y'all are wanting to condition further beyond what the staff recommendations are, some improvements to the park, but, you know, all agreeing that those are yet to be determined, that there be a condition that the developer meet with staff, a council designee, and the community representative, you know, at a period of time prior to and throughout the process of building the project, to meet community needs, you know, as they deem necessary moving forward. And that way you don't pin yourself down, but you have community involvement in
Absolutely.
some of the improvements that go on in the park.
So
Makes sense.
I would change my motion to, based on the conversation, to remove,
I'd remove
I'm
the
gonna remove the-
mandatory motion
Yeah.
for providing the field.
yes. And
I mean,
I'd like to keep the streetscaping coming from, because they've already suggested that they would be interested in that, coming down, starting from the entrance to the softball field, down and around the whole curve, to the end of their development at least. And then, I don't know how to create a motion that would direct us to make some potential decision-making in the future, other than to just not have it, and to politely ask the developer to work with our staff
Well,
about amenities that they might be able to contribute to the benefit of the city with what they're doing.
Before we nail down that wording too, I also want to, you know, respectfully ask that we also include the City of Chamblee's Recreation Advisory Committee's list of recommendations, to have that submitted with the project as well, and have those submitted for consideration. I know that they've been submitted to us. I'd like them to be submitted with,
For consideration, but I wouldn't agree to make them a condition of approval tonight. I'd agree to have them submitted for consideration.
well, it seems to me that what we're working on here is all of these things being submitted for consideration.
I think this is what one of the problems is that if we're gonna say we wanna work with our developers, yet we have a project that we're saying that you guys are considering to potentially approve with all these conditions. My concern is, what is this message gonna send? We want things to be done the right way. for
These are the things,
but-
Scott, these are the things the
but-
developer
but
has
what
said
I'm
they
saying
want to do.
is that when the next development comes
Yeah.
up and it's in a different neighborhood, and, if these infill ordinances aren't looked at, and these zoning ordinances are not looked at for the city, it's just gonna be an ongoing situation we're gonna be dealing with, or the council will be dealing with. So I just think that's just one of my big concerns, is that it's almost kind of a piecemeal situation, and that we're saying, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that, but there's no real determination. So, and my concern is that until these ordinances are really looked at, for the infill housing and for the zoning, is Holly Hills next, what's gonna be the next situation where this comes up that we may not be prepared for. So I just wanted to put that out.
That's opening up a whole another
Yeah,
conversation.
that's not necessarily germane to this conversation at this point. We've got
But you guys go ahead.
Go ahead, Chief.
I think I hear what everybody's saying, but the problem is gonna be putting this in writing and having an understanding and agreement that goes forward. About the only way I can see that is if somebody comes up with a dollar amount that you're asking the developer to spend, and then the different committees or whoever can sit down and they can weigh the cost of what they want up to that dollar amount, but it gives the developer an amount that you're saying you expect, and he can say yes or no. And later on, it doesn't become an argument or.
Yeah, I would be comfortable reciting my, my motion to approve the variance request for the 9 conditions as recommended by staff, and recommending, and adding the additional condition that the streetscaping that was recommended at 9 actually be extended from the driveway down through the curb to the edge of their property. I'm not sure that I feel comfortable, because I had spoken with the developer about different things that they were interested in doing. It looks like we're not actually interested in some of those things, so I wouldn't be comfortable moving forward with directing them to do anything at any cost. But I'm open to suggestions.
Well, I think what the chief suggested is probably where it's going to naturally lead, and that's where it needs to end up. And I don't know if we've had those conversations yet. I know that we've had the conversations about what the developer is able to do, what they're willing to do, what the community is expecting, what the council is expecting. I know that those conversations I don't know that we've put.
These are only 10 months. This is not
Right.
a development.
No, I understand that, and I'm not necessarily asking, for the world to be provided here. But I think the chief makes a great point, and I don't know that we've nailed down, or the developer has nailed down a price point on this.
I think one of the other things that if we're going to concede the use of that vacant field, or not vacant field, that's the play field, let's call it play field, then I think you should also include in there that they regrass it.
Okay.
Okay, that's a must, okay?
Okay.
And then it would be a great idea to consider a dollar amount. I don't know what that would be. Let me throw out a number, 20 grand.
I think we
No, I don't mean for grassing, and I don't mean
Yeah.
for extending, I mean in addition to.
Why don't we set regrassing the grassy area and set an amount, a budget of $20,000 for recommendations to come from the Recreation Advisory Committee to be approved by council.
I think that number's way too low.
Okay.
I think it's a good number to start with, that's
Okay.
fine. I think that the staff recommendations are a given. The staff have come back with that, and I think these additional recommendations or these additional conditions should be considered separately.
Would you be okay if I asked the applicant a question?
Sure. It's your prerogative.
That's right. That's right, thank you. If the applicant would step forward and let us know if there's a dollar figure that you're comfortable, after seeing this conversation, if there's a dollar figure that your client would be comfortable setting as a budget for amenities to be approved by the Recreation Advisory Committee and actually not by the developer.
We're agreeable to $20,000, but let me just state in the outset that you're talking about off-site improvements, which are exactions that have recently been ruled by the United States Supreme Court as being unlawful and unconstitutional. So we're willing to,
So maybe we'll make a recommendation.
so you can make a recommendation that we'll make these off-site improvements up to 20 grand. We'll agree to those. Other than that, we're not going to agree to anything.
Thanks, sir. Tom, would you care to restate your motion?
Sure, that's it, in just a moment. So my motion then would be to approve the variance request with the 9 conditions as recommended by staff with the following additional conditions. That the adjacent field between the subject property and the tennis courts be made available for a parking easement during construction, and in return, the developer will install, at the cost to the developer, a new, multi-purpose grass field at the direction of staff, and to recommend that the developer contribute amenities to the park in an amount of $20,000 at the direction of staff, and the developer agreed to make every effort to install maximum paved parking area in the rear of the property for guest parking at the direction of staff. Does that work?
Yeah, did you second that again?
Actually, I wanted to stop you before you started it, so if you want a second to get to discussion, go ahead.
Second.
May it please the council, let me just be sure that all those improvements have a cap of $20,000.
Tom, the reason I wanted to start, or stop you before you started that was with, and I'm glad you spoke to the applicant because that answer was disconcerting to me. And at this point in time, let me gather my thoughts.
Do it quickly because I'm going to call the question.
At this point, with that answer and that discussion that we've just had, I'd be more interested in tabling it, so we can determine, since we are talking about a number that I think is way off, I'd be more interested in tabling it and getting specifics, which you started out as, but we may as well have these conversations up the front end rather than the back end.
But off-site improvements are what he has pointed out have been deemed to be
Right.
illegal, to make them requirements for the variance. That's why I posed my question as a recommendation.
Okay, now,
You can make a motion for it if you want to, at any time, just to be clear.
So we have a motion and a second then, as stated by Councilmember Hogan, which he will give that information to the city clerk, which has been seconded by Councilwoman Robson. Is there any other discussion on that particular motion? All those in favor? 3 opposed? 2. The motion will pass. The next item on the agenda then is variances for Keswick Manor subdivision at 5140 Peachtree Boulevard, 5158 Peachtree Boulevard, 5170 Peachtree Boulevard. We had A, variance number 1, a variance for lot 10, section 104, which requires a minimum rear yard setback of 30 feet on all lots. The applicant requests a 20-foot rear yard setback for lot 10.
Motion to approve the variance as submitted.
Second?
Very good. Is there discussion? There's a motion and a second to approve as submitted. All those in favor? 3 opposed? 2 opposed. B, variance number 2, a variance for 5 lots from section 903B that requires a minimum 30-foot front yard setback for all lots. The applicant requests a 10-foot front yard setback for lots 1 through 5.
Motion to approve is submitted as recommended by staff.
Second.
Very good. Is there any discussion? So we have a motion and a second to approve as submitted with recommendations by staff. All those in favor? 3 opposed, 2 in opposition. Letter C, variance number 3, a variance from section 513 to allow private drives as a means for access for lots 1 and 5, and a waiver of subdivision regulation section 4.3 that limits private driveways to serving 2 or fewer lots.
Motion to approve the variance as submitted.
Second? Very good. We have a motion and a second to approve as submitted. All those in favor? 3 in opposition. We have 2 in opposition.